Okay, so now we need to modify the structure for home. So right here, whenever the application loads, we need to fetch a list of articles. We're going to fetch 6. So whenever the application loads again, it's going to show some default articles. So we can have something on the screen. Then we need to dispatch a different action. We're going to dispatch an action for this, and we're going to dispatch a different action for whenever the user types something, and we're going to do a search with the keywords. So we need 2 different actions. I'm going to delete this for now, and I'm going to go right here to source and create an action directory. So I'm going to say actions. We didn't have this just yet, so I'm going to say index.js. So now again, each action is going to use Axios. So I'm going to import Axios from Axios. Good, that's the first thing. Now, since we are using JSON server, we need the actual URL, and we are using localhost 3004. So I'm going to create a variable. It's going to call URL, and we're going to host everything inside of a variable, so we don't have to type it every time we need to make a request to this. So an action is just a function. So I'm going to say export, then function, open and close, and each function needs a name. All right, so we can call it. So I'm going to call it artists list, and then all, because it makes sense. We are getting all the artists. So each action, whenever we dispatch an action, is going to return an object, and this object contains a payload and a type. Remember? So we're going to say type, and then we're going to say payload. Now the type is going to be the actual name. So we're going to call it get artists and then all, again, because it makes sense. Then we're going to do a comma, and now the Redux promise comes into place. Whenever we invoke this, whenever we call this action, we dispatch an action with this name, the application is going to go here and is going to immediately return this. The problem is that we are making a request, and a request might take some time. Remember, with Axios, we make the request and then returns the promise, and then might take a few seconds or milliseconds or whatever. So this return, it's not going to stop for the request, for the promise. So we need a way to stop everything until the promise gets resolved, and then return the payload. And that's what the promise middleware does. It's going to stop everything until the promise is done, and then it's going to return this with the actual payload and the response from the database. So how does this works? Real simple. We're going to say const. I'm going to create a variable, and I'm going to call it request. Could be any name. So I'm going to say axios.get, open and close, and I'm going to use template strings. And first we need to use the URL we are including at the top, / and then artists. Now what we're going to be doing, we're going to be limiting this. So I want to limit everything to 6 results. Good. So I'm going to do space, and then of course this returns the promise with a response. Response. And it's going to do something with that response. Now, if since the only thing we are doing is just returning the data and the response, there's no need to do this and to do this return. What we could do, we can just pass response.data. So the only thing that is going to get returned to this variable is going to be this, right? There's no need to do the other thing. So okay, so after the Axios is done and the promise gets resolved, is going to return whatever data we get from this request. Okay, so I'm going to copy this request and I'm going to paste it down here. So now promise middleware knows that we have a promise right here, and it's going to await until everything gets resolved, and then it's going to return this. That is the main point of using this. It's really, great. Fixes a lot of issues for us. So I'm going to save it. So now this action is ready. What we don't have yet is going to be the actual reducer. We don't have a get artists all reducer. So let's go to the reducers and create one. I'm going to go right here and say case, open and close, and it's going to be called get artists all. This one is going to return something. What it's going to be returning is going to be first the ... and the previous state. And then we're going to do comma. What this one is going to be doing is going to be artist, and then list. It's going to return a list of artists. And the contents of this artists list is going to be the action.payload. Right. So this is pretty much done. Of course, it's working. We are not getting any errors. But for now, what we need to do, we need to go to home and convert this home promoted to a container. So I'm going to go right here to source, create a new file. Sorry, not a new file, a new directory that is going to be called containers. Now this container is going to be the actual home. So I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to call it home container. You can call this whatever you want. And then .js. So this home container is going to pretty much have all the logic we have at home. So I'm going to copy all and I'm going to paste it. Then we're going to be modifying this, don't worry. And this one, delete it all. Yeah, sorry for that. Just we're going to delete everything. So now what we're going to be doing is just create a functional component and include this home container. You're just delegating. So I'm going to say import and then React from React, just like that. Then we close it and we want to import home container, and that is the keyword. We know that home is a container because it's going to be related to Redux. So it's .. containers / and home container. This one is going to just return a function that is going to be called home. Open and close. Again, return, and then we return some JSX. We're going to be returning a div with this home container inside. And of course, we need to do export default and then home. Good. Of course, this one is going to fail because it's outside. We are requesting this views from components, and we are just behind this. So okay, first I'm going to get rid of this component will mount for now. And I'm going to get rid of this artist list. Let me just delete it. We're going to use this in a minute. We're going to be changing and using this one for now. So first, we need to change some things. We need to change the search and the artist list because we have the wrong directory right here. So this one is going to be inside dot and then components / and the same thing with the other one. It's components /. So let me copy this and paste it. Right. Okay, so at least we get something. That's good. We are not getting any data, but we get something. We are not going to use the state, so I'm going to delete the state. That's good. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, we're going to fetch the articles whenever the application loads. Okay? So we need a few things. We need to first connect with Redux, and then we need to bring the actions and use bind action creators. So I'm going to say import, and the first thing is connect. And then it's going to be from, and then React, and then Redux. Good, that's the first thing. Then we need to import the actions we're going to be using. For now, we have only one. We have this artist list all. So I'm going to go back to home container and bring that one. So it's going to be from, and then .. /actions. Good. We're going to be using bind action creators because, we know that we have one action, but we're going to be using another one in a minute. So it's going to be bind action, just like this, and then creators from, and then Redux. I should be getting the snippet. I'm not getting the snippets. I don't know why. Sometimes it doesn't work the way you want. So okay. So now we have the artist list all, and we have the bind action creators, and we have the connect. So what we need to do now is to convert the home to use Redux. So I'm gonna delete it all. I'm gonna say export, then default, and instead of exporting the home, default, there we go. Okay, there we go. Export default, and we're gonna use connect. Now connect is going to use the map state to props and the map dispatch to props. For now, we're not going to use it, so I'm going to say just null, right? Okay. So if I save this, of course, nothing is going to be working. Okay. So now what we need to do with the connect, we need to pass the actual components. And in this case, it calls home, but we already have a home, so I'm going to call it home container. Okay, so I'm going to copy and pass the home container. I know, okay, that's working. So now the first thing we need to do, right, the next thing we need to do is to do the map state to props and the map dispatch to props. Okay, so first I'm going to do function and then map state to and then props. Now the map state to props uses a state, and at the end it's just going to return something, right? Okay. So what it's going to be returning is going to be the artists. So I'm going to say artists, just like this. Now, inside artist is going to be, we can host whatever we get from the state.artists. If we go to the artist reducers, this one is going to return an artist list, but on the index of artist, it's going to be called artists. So this is what the name we're going to be using. Inside home is going to be inside state, and then the name, whatever name we are passing. If we are creating this with docs, this one should be docs. So we're going to say state and then artists. Okay, and just for fun, I'm going to console log the state, open close state. Now we are not dispatching any action, so we are not really going to get anything. So I'm going to create the map dispatch to props, you know, the opposite of this. Map this patch, and then to, and then props, open and close. So this one has a dispatch, just like that, open and close again. So what we're going to be using is going to be the bind action creators we have at the top. We've only have one action, but we're going to be using another one in a minute. So we're going to say return and then bind action creators. The first argument on this one is going to be the actions. So we've only have one, which is the artist list all. So I'm going to be passing that one. The second argument is going to be this dispatch. Okay, dispatch. So we have the map state to props and the dispatch to props ready. The thing is that we are not really using them. So I'm going to copy map state to props, and it's the first argument, and then the second one is going to be the dispatch. Right. I'm going to reload the page, and of course, at least it's not failing. We get the actual view. So okay, so inside the state, inside this state.props, we should be getting this function. So what I'm going to do, just to check, let me not do this. Oh, sorry, not do this. And on the render, I'm going to do console.log and then this.props, just to check if at least we get the action inside props. Okay, so let me make this bigger and go to console. I'm going to remove this, and we don't really need it. So we have an object, and we have artist, which is the object, and then artist all, which is the function. This is our action, so we have it inside props. That's very good. Okay, that's good. So now let me just leave the console open. We're going to use this in a minute, so just going to leave it open. Okay, so now we have the actions, the artist list all inside this component. So we need to use it. We need to dispatch an action. So what we're going to be doing is on the component will mount. The application will start, and we're going to do a request for, I don't know, six views, 6 articles, just like we did here. So we say this.props.artists all, because we have it inside props. This one is going to dispatch an action. It's going to go to the actions. It's going to dispatch it. It's going to get the data we need. It's going to trigger the get artist all. The artist all is going to go to Redux, update the store, and then we're going to be getting everything inside the console log. So this is the second time, all right? This is the second request. After we dispatch the action, we get this. And inside artist, we have the list of artists. So that's really cool. And we have 6, of course. Right, so the next thing is going to be passing whatever we are getting inside artist and then artist list to the actual component that renders this information, which is going to be artist list. So I'm going to copy artist list and go right here at the bottom and, include that component. Open and close. So I'm going to be passing a prop with the, the list of artists. That, of course, makes sense, right? So it's going to be artists, just like this, artists. It's going to be equal to open and close, and it's going to be inside this dot props dot artists, just like this, dot, and then it's going to be called artist list. Artists list. Oh, it's with a capital L. So okay, everything kind of looks nice. Let me just double check the artist reducers is artist list. It's going to be singular. So let me just change it. It's going to be artist list. Okay, everything looks nice. So now we're going to be getting an error. Now, if you remember the first time we do the console log this props, this.props.artist, it's empty, So we are trying to map something that, has no keys, is empty. We cannot map it. So what we can do to fix this, in this case, what we can just add some checking right here. So we can check if the, the list it's empty or not, and do something if the list is not empty. If it's empty, of course, do nothing. So I'm going to say if props dot artists, just like this, it's of course is true, we're going to do something. And I'm going to be adding an additional checking. I'm going to say props dot artists, just like this, dot, and then length. And it's greater than 0. So this way we are sure that we have something inside that props.artists. All right. And if not, if it's empty, what we're going to be doing, we are just going to return null. We are not going to show anything. So if I save it, we are getting the list, and we are getting 6. So this comes from Redux. All right. Really cool, right? So everything works as expected. Okay, so the next thing is going to be dispatching an action. Whenever we type something right here, we are getting the data inside the console log because we have an event listening for this, but we don't have an action that listens for this. So let's go to the next section and add an action for the search.